Hi, it's the Leadership Series, and I'm excited to get to talk to Kristen Okesson, who is the Senior Vice President of Connoisseur Media. So, Kristen, Connoisseur Media is obviously a media company, but how would you describe what you do there?
I oversee the Connecticut operation. So that includes our six radio stations, which are based in Milford. Our corporate office is in Westport. And as well as we have a lot of ancillary businesses, which include digital marketing, events, and that's pretty much the main. And we have we own the Rudin Report, which is a high school sports business, and also we have an advertising agency, PR firm, Dynormus Media. So it's the main piece is radio and digital marketing, and then we have a few other offshoots of Connoisseur Media.
Well, you have a fun job based on what you just said. So, what's one of the biggest perks of your job?
I think that the best part is the people that I work with. So, it's a radio business. So I work with incredibly talented people, the ones that are in front of the mic, the ones that are behind the mic. I'm surrounded by a lot of good energy, great people, and kind of the excitement of live radio, of events, promotions, and kind of, big moments where we do great things for the community, and a lot of effort kind of goes into bringing people together for good. So no 2 days are the same, and that kind of keeps it exciting.
So, did you always know you wanted to go into the radio business, or how did you get to where you are?
I did, which is really funny, right? I always wanted to be on the radio, and so when I was 16 years old, I found out. Most people that are probably watching this won't know who I'm talking about, but I used to watch this show, Kate and Allie, and Kate was this woman, Susan St. James, who was buying a radio station with her husband, Dick Ebersol, who was the president of NBC Sports in Litchfield, Connecticut, and I grew up in Woodbury. And so my sister dragged me to the radio station before it went on the air and told me to bang on the door and ask for a job. And I did that, and I got the job, and I was 16 years old. So I have been in this business since I was 16 years old. So too many years to count, but I wanted to be on the air. I kind of quickly realized that if I was going to support myself, I probably needed to sell advertising first. And so that's how I got into the business, was selling radio commercials for many years.
That's cool. Well, radio, it's not just being on air. As you said, there's a lot of different aspects to the business. So, how do you think radio has grown and diversified?
It has evolved so much. I mean, the days of, if you think about the on-air talent, many years ago, a DJ would show up, they would do their shift, and then they would leave. And now they're building podcasts. They're, engaging their fans on social media. Parts of their shows are being repurposed on different platforms. Our shows are now streamed on all different devices. A part of their job are now representing our brands in the community at many different events. And, we've expanded into digital, into video, into branded content, you name it. It's an exciting time to be in radio because it's really now a multi-platform business, a very powerful medium that reaches a lot of people, and it's fun to be a part of.
Well, you must have a big team to accomplish this, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, what's the biggest challenge of being in charge of a large team in the public eye?
I think the biggest challenge is that you can't make everyone happy all the time. And we try, but we can't. There's always something we might miss. There's always going to be someone that we wanted to help, but we couldn't. Remember, a radio station is, and I shouldn't say remember because a lot of people don't realize, it's a public license, right? We are governed by the FCC. We have a license to serve our community. So a lot of what we do is public service. That's a big part of our culture. And so we try our very best, and we always want to do do good. And so sometimes, we miss things, and that part is hard. But I've learned to really focus on the impact we are making, which is tremendous. The good that we do, the people that we reach, the businesses we help build through advertising, and the successes that we've had overall.
Do you have any specific like moments or stories that you can relate what you just said to?
Oh boy, yeah. Probably one of the bigger things that we do is one of our radio stations has an annual toy drive that raises over $100,000 in toys and cash for we choose five different organizations in the community that we divvy up the money and toys to serve children in need during obviously a very important time of the year when kids want to feel like someone's thinking of them. And you can't imagine waking up on Christmas morning and not having a gift, but that happens, and we do everything we can to make sure that we, try to change as many kids' mornings as we can. And so that's probably one of the biggest things that we do. But it's also the small things that make a big difference, whether it's, we work very closely with the Center for Family Justice, which is a justice center in Bridgeport that helps women that have been, or anybody, not just women, that have been affected by domestic violence or sexual assault. And so trying to just get the word out there. I mean, for us, it's such a simple thing, but it makes such a profound difference. If you don't know where to turn for help, what we do is we just get the word out. This is the number to call. This is where you can go for assistance, and they take it from there. So, um, you know, it's those kinds of things that we do where we can immediately see the impact. Adopting a class in Bridgeport and going into that classroom, throughout the year, and bringing different guest speakers and doing good for some of these kids that really need that moment in their lives. I could go on and on, but there's a lot of examples.
Yeah. So, do you think you have a specific style when it comes to your management? And what have you learned about managing people through the years?
I think that treating people with respect is number one. I believe that is the most important, building that trusting relationship. I mean, I think people would say I'm probably very direct and I try to be transparent. I want people to know, where they stand and, why we value them as an employee and things that we need to work on. We all have things we need to work on. I I I don't like being indecisive, so I like working with people that can make decisions, feel empowered to make decisions. I don't like to waste time. A lot of what we do, is, you kind of have to sometimes, it's a balance of art and science. Sometimes you got to go with your gut, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not a micromanager. I like to hire smart people, and I trust them to do great work. And I think, worked really well for us. Ideally, they're smarter than I am because I can, which is, not hard to do. But I want to learn from them too. I think
Mhm.
over time, what I've learned is that im important attributes of good management is one that, there's a trusting relationship. They know where they stand. So clarity and consistency, goes a long way in building a strong team.
How would you say you build your strong team? You say that you like to hire people who are like intelligent, and how do you build your team?
You got to find the best people out there. That's, I would say, a really big part of my job is not just hiring the best people, but making sure that they, feel motivated to stay with us, which becomes harder and harder to do. It's the culture of, getting a job and keeping it for 20 or more years, like many people did for, decades. Is not really it's not, young people don't think like that now, right? So it's really important to make sure that employees feel valued, that they feel empowered, that they feel like they can continuously, improve their skill set and that there's opportunities for growth. And so I think like, finding employees and then putting in the effort to make sure that they feel that there is long-term growth. And sometimes long-term growth doesn't just mean, being the manager, but improving their, skill set and allowing them to do things that interest them. I think it's important. It goes back to communication. It always goes back to communication. So if you're having those ongoing conversations with employees, that's how you build a good team. You find them. It's one thing to find them, but it's retaining them, and it really is good communication and good relationships. I mean, I will say that I feel like my number one responsibility is to make sure that employees are, um, as happy as they can be, right? I mean, it still is work. And so again, you want everyone to be happy. You're not always going to get there, but if there's issues or things that we can do to make employees feel more valued or appreciated, that is at the top of my list every day. Those are my clients, right? The employees. And so, it's always important to be recruiting for good talent, but not forgetting the people around you and making sure that they're in a good place is a very important part of what I do.
Mm. So, Kristen, what's your advice for somebody who wants to enter the field that you're in?
I think it's really, I say this about, I talk to college students a lot, and I say this really, I think it goes for any industry, is the back to communication skills, like really hone your communication skills. Have the confidence to pick up the phone and call a manager and express your interest in wanting to get into the field, whether it be radio, accounting, dental hygiene, whatever, like pick up the phone and make that phone call and build that relationship with someone who can help you. You it's like a lost art, I find, is emails only go so far, and now emails have become even more robotic in a way with AI. And I can't tell you how many emails I get that are like, just so obviously not written by a human. It's like the more human you can be, the better. And so if a high schooler or a college student were to call me and say that they wanted to get into the radio business, like they would immediately get an appointment on my calendar, because picking up the phone and making that call says so much. It says you have confidence, you can communicate, and you know that you might be interested in something at a young age. Like we want to foster that and cultivate that as much as possible.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
I'm happy to be here, Hayden, and I look forward to watching and listening to future episodes of yours. Thank you for thinking of me.
Thank you.